Um, all right, so Eureka discovered a nice avenue of invasion to the personality problem based on the fact that, uh, in some cases, just as we've been taking most of the examples have been semi frivolous in nature, although it seems it's slightly crass to say, okay, we're giving an example of Tom Cruise as against Matthew McConaughey, and this is the example of Agamemnon type personality as against Achilles, and then say this is a frivolous example because it means at the same time that we're saying these human beings as human beings are not that impressive. At the same time, this is exactly what we are saying from the point of view of the Protagorean theory of personality, which is the full personality is the one that we want to identify and then have that one tell us how to behave. Or on a lower scale, in a practical scale, have that one be the leader, the one that we give more power than we give to anyone else, because everyone else is bound by the laws, but they are the ones who would decide what the exception is or decide where the justice and that's a funny thing, by the way. In Kelsen, for example, in that's sort of like the primary canonical example of positive law. Kelsen, who had a little, who came out poorly, as most do, in a dust up with Strauss, and had to change some text in one of his books. But in any case, this seems to be the most blanched example of positivism in law. But isn't positivism in law it's just something very unheimlich? But anyway, what I'm saying is, if you go with positivity, then it's as though you would admit it's a utilitarianism of law. You admit the law isn't true. It's exactly the same as positivism and admitting that the law isn't true would be identical somehow. That's why I think positivism always has to be you could say the current law is the law while admitting that you don't really know whether, say, the Congress in the U.S. system could continue to modify and create new laws, which would then bring the law into perfection or into identity with in Aristotle's version with truth, decay, or justice, and the Kelon. So, but all right, getting back to the original point is that, yeah, Protagoras would tell us who the full personality was, and we're only sort of mainly because the media produces, or the Hollywood and so on, not really just Hollywood, but global entertainment, and the Davos entity presents us with these things. That's what our Dasein is most able to find low and pathetic examples, and examples of people, individuals, which, even though they're very good examples from the point of view of a mathematical theory of personality, from the, if you want to say something exact, like here's a triangle, all triangles have exactly the same, the three angles always add up to exactly the same amount. If you had something where that didn't happen, it would be a different shape. And then what I'm trying to do is isolate cases where you're just making one difference. The shape is exactly like a triangle, and then say you make a little, well, say you regard it as, this is the point I have with Thomas Aquinas and with Catholicism, by the way. because Thomas makes a very neat phrase. He doesn't say the sum of the angles, rather he says that the right angle will always be equal to the sum of the other two angles in any triangle. It's a slightly different formula. But then say you have these hyperbolic shapes. This is what I'm saying. This is what Heidegger is saying. The Catholic oath, around the time of World War I, the oath that was the occasion for, maybe Heidegger already had the tendency to want to leave Catholicism, but this was the occasion for him saying, do they want to tell us, just as they tell the baker how to make lasagna, how to think? Does the Catholic system want to dictate to us, thinkers of Catholicism, those of us who are at the... Heidegger could have been a very great Jesuit, but yes, there's this occasion of the modernist oath. Was it maybe that he just used that as an excuse? We don't know. But on the other hand, it seems pretty serious as telling thinkers within the Catholic system that they can't think later. That was de facto loosened, and you could see it in the theological investigations and other, which is by a student of Heidegger's. But let's reset to the original point again. You have some personalities that are available because they're in films, but I've tried to show something higher. So I was thinking of the example, but it turns out that public intellectuals often tend to have something a little bit in common with this Davos entertainment entities, what it demands. So the example, so obviously Zizek would be an example of that, but and many more bland scholars who don't try to appeal to the kind of movie star avenue of invasion, which we first see in Derrida. So, but what I want to bring out is one of the students of Derrida, which is Avital Ronell. So I think here we have again an example where you can make an exact analogy which shows personality in this type of case where you have something where you only shift it in one dimension. So usually people are so much different one from the next that you can't make a clean comparison. You can't make anything like a exact or mathematical comparison. But if you have Avital Ronell and Judith Butler, then I think you have, in Jungian terms, you have the thinking type in Ronell and the feeling type in Butler. So the feeling type is the type that sort of asks themselves, is this acceptable or non-acceptable, and et cetera, whereas the thinking type is just only asks, is much crueler in a way, only asks, what is it? And is willing to say all kinds of things that are rude and mean in order to say what it is. Those are the characteristics from a Jungian point of view, and I think also more broadly in some German traditions. But this isn't exactly... I don't want to give them the comparison, so that's why I was conscious struck by the sort of gaffe in the last one and going into the Thomas Aquinas example and etc. I really want to give more examples which just show, just look and then you see what the difference is, and that's what the personality, that's the key into getting what personality is about, so that you can begin to analyze the world in the terms of personality and see what that offers. So I think in the case of the difference between, it's probably, what I want to say sort of a priori is probably there's these other types in this personality cluster and then there's sort of a superior type. So just as in the example of, I would say, Benicio del Toro, who actually played a detective in a movie not that long ago, so you could see, and he must have consciously thought of Peter Falk when he was doing it, so that aids in the comparison. But you could see that basically the difference between him and Falk is that Falk is hermeneutical or intelligent, whereas Del Toro lacks that. He's physical, he's psychologically low animal cunning, you'd call it, sort of Hobbes-like phrase, but he's not hermeneutical, Socratic in the other sense. And you can see that, and I think that's pretty exact. So there's always slight little modulations by the family, by other things, but nonetheless, it's pretty clear if you hone into what's being discussed. Likewise, I would want to say something analogous with the Ronell Butler case, but I think the Ronell Butler case is, since we're talking about people of a higher stature, as it were, of personality, then it's more interesting, although they're not of the highest stature. I think, in fact, I'd want to say that in a certain way, it's almost like you could say somebody like Derrida should be on top of a group, something like that McConaughey, on a much more superficial level, the Tom Cruise, McConaughey, maybe Dustin Hoffman has more depth in the same type of group. Remember, Hoffman and people, these casting people always see these connections, right? So like that movie, Rain Man, why did they cast Hoffman and Cruise? Because they're part of the same personality cluster. I'd say that's why movies are useful in this, but nonetheless, we could transfer this up to a higher level. I think, yeah, Derrida is a good example, like I was saying. But yeah, these examples have to be thought through correctly, and then in the horizon of yeah, the sparkle in the heart of the diamond here would be Protagorean thinking, but again, not understood as relativism, but understood as our Dasein is the type of Dasein that has access to this. It's only for us, and therefore, but not for all of us, because only for the one who has mustered the highest personality. Not that it's a matter of exercise towards it, but it's more of just being born towards it, and then the rest of us should identify it, because this will be, yeah, and something like the way of the Dalai Lamas were identified, right? So that's not such, it's been done before, but we should do it at a higher, not at that level that they do it, but from the Protagorean perspective.